welcome everybody today and welcome to beautiful Valencia for the EPP Congress. I'm delighted to welcome our old friend as speaker today, Markus Ferber, MEP, CSU from the German delegation, EPP, Vice Chair of the Subcommittee on Taxation, I think, and a member of the Econ Committee in the European Parliament. We're also delighted to be joined by Mr. Nuncio. He is from a member of the Portuguese Parliament, and he is former Secretary of State for Fiscal Affairs in Portugal, if I'm not mistaken, during the bailout years.
Exactly, the
So-
adjustment program.
Yes, so as an Irish person, I can...
Tough times.
Yes, very tough
God,
times.
and I'm squeezed here by you. Oh my goodness.
So today, we've just got about 25, 30 minutes. We're going to
Okay.
talk about Savings and Investment Union, as we know it in Brussels, Capital Markets Union. It's been on the agenda, dare I say, for a very long time, well over a decade. But what I would say is that probably the war in Ukraine and specifically the Trump presidency has kind of re-emphasized or reinvigorated the need for this in the future, and perhaps it has kind of put in kind of perspective or context the lack of progress that we've had over the last 10 years. So MEP Ferber, maybe if I could start with you, just by asking, why in your opinion do you think, Savings and Investment Union, we hear a lot about it, but why actually is it so important for both for Germany and for Europe?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, as you mentioned already, these things happening for 100 days now in United States. I think we should concentrate what we have to do on European side, whatever happens on the other side of the Atlantic, and therefore SIU, Saving and Investment Union, is one of the key elements, as especially the member state I know best, is very good in savings,
Yeah.
but we have huge lack on investments.
That's right.
And the main issue is how to bring these savings to become investments.
Yeah.
And I think that is the key element, and that means that we are not taking the money from the saving accounts and people get rid of their money. No. But how can we encourage them to not to save the money for almost no interest rates
Yeah.
and to investment for higher returns, especially when they are doing the savings for the private pension scheme. And I think the only tool we have at the moment are life insurances, which I think is not the most proper approach to achieve that. I'm not against life insurances,
yeah.
it's one part, but it shouldn't be the one and only part where money is invested. And therefore I think we should invent some instruments and tools on European level, how we can make it more attractive to put the money not on a savings account but on an investment account. And therefore we have some good examples around Europe. I remember what the Swedish are doing.
Yeah.
It fits, of course, for the Swedish,
Yeah.
but we know as well in the Netherlands with the pension funds for the second pillar mainly.
Yeah.
So we should think on a lot of these ideas, how to make this attractive. And as the Germans are really the saviors, I think it's very important for Germany as well. As I said, we have a lack on investments as well in Germany.
Yeah.
Also the new government, which hopefully will come into power next week, and Friedrich Merz will join us in 1.5 hours here at the Congress. We have a plan how to boost investments,
Yeah.
but if we can attract this boost for private investors additionally, I think we can achieve a lot.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Mr. Nuncio, kind of coming to you because, if we think about the long-term EU objectives, we've got the green transition, digital transition, there's security and defence. There's no shortage of areas in Europe that need investment. So I'm just wondering from your perspective, isn't Savings and Investment Union also absolutely critical to reach kind of the longer-term objectives?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. Yes, in my opinion, a Savings and Investment Union is crucial for the European Union and for achieving its long-term objectives. Mario Draghi said in his recent report that low investment savings is mostly caused by a capital markets fragmentation in Europe.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I think he's completely right. One of the objectives, as Marcus said before, one of the objectives of Savings and Investment Union in Europe is exactly to tap the enormous amounts of savings currently staying at bank deposits, which provide very low return. If the European households would follow the same pattern of investment as the US households, pouring their savings in financial assets, it is estimated at around 8 trillion euros would become available to market investment, which is quite impressive. In addition to that, it is also important to say that the flow of European savings into US financial assets, it is estimated that is around something like 350 million euros per year, which is also quite impressive. So trying to answering directly to your question,
Yep.
I would say that both green transition and defense require a considerable amount of investments in the future. And I think we must be able to provide European households solutions to invest their savings in financial assets in Europe, and at the same time empowering our businesses and broadening their access to finance and capital here in Europe.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting. I have to say, it really, this is a personal view, but it really annoys me when, politicians present the argument as if we spend more on defence, for example, we will have to cut, social security benefits. But like, given the amount of savings, like American economists are regularly shocked when I tell them that the overall savings rate in the EU is, well over 10%.
Yeah.
And that in countries like Italy, it's like 17 or 18%.
I know.
In the US, it's like 4.5%.
Exactly.
So I always say, shortage of money is not the problem. We're a very rich continent, every single EU member state in a global context. But it's just about how that money is allocated, and I guess our risk
Flow to
preferences.
investment, yeah, exactly.
And as I always say to the Americans when they say you need to understand about leverage and you need to understand about investment, I always say, but yeah, you come and have Europe's 20th century history, and maybe then your risk preference will be slightly different.
Exactly.
But that's a different comment. But MEP Ferber, coming back to you. So I'm just trying to think now, you're a member of the Econ Committee. I'm just trying to think at a European level, what can we actually do, or what should the priorities be to kind of stimulate this kind of change?
I think number one is that we have to change the approach. We have for the moment a piece of legislation in front of us, the retail investment strategy. And going through it in the details, I have the feeling that it is more foreseen to protect the investor for himself.
Right, okay.
And the private households.
Yeah.
And I think that is the wrong approach, because if we really want to achieve that private households become investors, we have to go another way around. And that means number one of, what's with this micro? Yeah, it's a horrible, maybe it's better now. Number one is how to attract investments for private households and what the public can play a role for. So I think the public, like we did in InvestEU, can take some of the common risk, which cannot be borne by someone individually, but on top of that, private investments can be organized. But taking the risk idea into account, for me as a private investor, as a private household, I would never be allowed to do so, except I sign hundreds of pages that I'm really willing to do so. But what is my reaction if I have to sign all of this? Maybe it's very dangerous, otherwise I wouldn't have to do so. So, sorry to say it very clear, this retail investment strategy is not strengthening the retail investor, it's weakening the retail investor in having access to these products. And therefore I think what we have to do is to rethink, as I said, what has to be taken as a risk from the public side
Yep.
for everyone, and then for professional investors as well, or for those sampling private money to act like a professional investor, which then can invest on top of that. And as you rightly said, so defense is nothing for the private investor, so we need the public hand for doing so. But if then the investments in infrastructure, digitalization can done via these areas, we are on the right track, and that's why I appreciate Beyond Risks, where we read in the SIU strategy, if that is going to fail and going in the wrong direction, it will be withdrawn. We even have to think on this famous pan-European pension product, which is such a safe thing that no one is investing in it. We have to think on securitizations,
That's
which
right.
is really, it's not the solution of everything, but it could close a gap we have. There's a lot of problems of blanco parts in the balance sheets of the banks, bank balance sheets, and to bring that to the financial markets, that banks can then again be attracted to invest more, and beyond that, private investors could jump in as well. So I think we have to rethink this cooperation between the different actors in the financial markets, that they create this attractiveness for private investors. Because at the end of the day, the average saver in Europe saves around about 50 euros a month.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the figure. So
Yeah.
he will never be able to invest in a highway or in a digital line or something like that. So you have to sample that.
Yes.
You need someone who is delivering that services.
Yeah.
And I think that is what we have to think on. And the last thing, and that is what Draghi wrote in his report, very clear as well, we have to overcome these national borderlines. I know for an Irish it's difficult to understand if you're surrounded by the sea, but coming from Germany, where we have 9 neighbor countries,
Yeah.
we know what it means. You have only one, but a very important one, with you as an important member as well. But we have a lot of borders, and IMF this year gave 2 figures which I think are really shocking. The non-tariff barriers
Yeah.
we have on the trade of good is like a tariff of 40%, and in the services, 110% tariffs.
Yeah.
So it's like US, China. And there's a huge potential even to attract more investments.
Yeah.
And I think that are the things we have to think on as parliamentarians, but I hope,
Yeah.
you know, you are in elections, and we are very hopefully that Montenegro
We are going
will
to win again.
win again, yeah, and I really cross my fingers for that. That we get from the council the support as well to overcome these borders, and then I think we can really make an attractive, scaling up market where private investments can create benefits which on the saving account you never ever would be able to achieve.
Yeah, it's true. Mr. Nuncio, I'm just thinking that like probably now we're facing like it's the period with the most kind of economic uncertainty probably since the great financial crisis. And I know that you were state secretary during that period. So I'm just wondering, like looking back on your experience in that period, are there any kind of lessons from that period in Portuguese history to what Europe faces today?
Yes, I agree that we are facing a period of great uncertainty, mostly motivated by geopolitical emergency as Russia invaded Ukraine, but also caused by new policies adopted by the new American administration. And I think that's also an important point. The financial crisis in Portugal taught us a great deal, and I think there are some lessons, surely, also for the European Union. Back in 2010, we are facing a deep international recession, as you remember, and Portugal was exposed to a huge twin deficits. So back in 2010, we reached a fiscal deficit of 11.4% of GDP, and we also had a current account deficit of 9.8% of GDP.
Oh, okay.
And in that moment, the government decided to increase public spending, which turned the situation even worse.
Yeah.
Um, as you mentioned, I serve as Secretary of State for Tax Affairs in the government that was responsible for implementing the adjustment program.
Yeah.
And at that time, we have to make some tough decisions to save the country, namely to reduce salaries, to cut pensions, and to increase taxes. But having said that, I think Portugal has learned the lesson from the financial crisis of 2010, and we correct our path, and now we are in a much more solid situation than before 2010.
Yeah.
Let me just stress that in 2024 we achieved our second fiscal surplus in a row, 0.7%, which was quite impressive for a country like Portugal. We also achieved a current account surplus, and we are able to reduce our public debt, which is now below 95% of GDP, which is also quite impressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you look at what we had in 2010. So with the challenge facing, which Europe is facing, for instance, more demands on the defense spending,
Yeah.
I think we must be very careful and do not forget, we should not forget the importance of fiscal and current accounts balances, both at the EU level and member states level,
Yeah, and
in order to avoid new financial crises in the future.
absolutely. And I think it's funny because
I think this is a very German approach, but also a
You
Portuguese
perform
approach.
better than Germany after
but-
3 years
yeah.
socialist
But,
government.
but also a Portuguese approach
Yeah.
from someone who has been part of a government that has to
Exactly.
implement a very tough adjustment program.
And usually on panels like this, we talk about all the problems that the Eurozone has. We should do this, we should do that. But actually the performance of Greece and Portugal in particular over the last decade has been a huge success.
Yeah, we learn our lesson.
Yes, exactly. Let's just see if that lesson is learned by the rest of the
Yeah, but
EU.
it shows that it's possible.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's right. That's
It
right.
shows it is possible,
Yeah.
and it's not austerity as I always
No.
hear.
Yeah, that's
No.
right.
And you did it because you've been forced to, and some member states should do it without being forced,
Yeah.
Yes.
like mine.
Yeah.
Or
Voluntarily.
or
Yeah.
even probably in a much more precarious situation that I guess nobody wants to talk about is France at the moment
Yeah, that's
with
right.
a
That
6
is
or
the
7%.
main problem at the moment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
But
huge
it's the
problem
elephant
right
in the
now.
room.
Yes, exactly. But before we finish, I just want to ask you one more question each. MEP Ferber, you mentioned the new government in Berlin. It's CDU, Christian Democrat Chancellor in Mr. Merz. Not a Bavarian, but the next best thing. So the question is, can this new government really, I suppose, get things going again in Germany?
It has to.
It has to.
To be very
yeah.
clear, it has to,
Yeah.
because what we saw now, 3 years of this famous, we call them traffic light coalition,
Yeah.
red for the socialists, yellow for the liberals, and green for the
Yeah.
Greens. This traffic light coalition created something we never had in history since World War II, 3 years with no growth. We never had such a development, and that shows the lack of economical wisdom, understanding, you name
Yeah.
it, we saw in the last 3 years. So we have to do something. And for me, it's very important, as I know Friedrich Merz for more than 30 years now.
Yep.
He started like me as a young boy in the European Parliament. I'm still in the Parliament. He made career somewhere else and now becoming Chancellor. But he's really a committed European.
Yes. Yeah.
And even that Macron, who never had a good relation with Olaf Scholz, he had with Angela Merkel, but not with Olaf Scholz, is suffering and has announced that the day after he is sworn in, he will organize a meeting with
Summit.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, a French-German summit to show, yes, we have to deliver on European level as well. And as I said, the scaling up, this leverage, can only be organized if we really create in some areas a single market, and therefore the Draghi report, coming back what you said very clearly, and I fully underwrite that, has described that we are able to deliver that. And especially in a world we have these huge challenges around us, a strong, committed Europe with a strong single market is the only answer. I was in the last week in China and I saw, of course, what a market with 1.4 billion people can create. And we are not able to create something similar with 440 million people, and therefore I see a huge potential. That's why I said concentrate on that, what we can do by ourselves. No one can intervene, no one can disturb us, and I think therefore Germany has to play a crucial role, and we are willing to do so in our interest, for our market. But if I visit the member states, our neighbors, a few weeks ago I was in Czech Republic, met the Minister for Economic Affairs, and you start this small talk, oh, how are you doing? And he said, Mr. Ferber, if you are the third year in a recession, we are already dead economically because of all these interdependencies.
Of course.
So please go out of the hospital, become healthy again, because that is the only chance for us to recover. And therefore I think it's very clear what we have to do.
Yeah.
And I'm very positive that Friedrich Merz will deliver that. We will play our role as the CSU, the small sister party, where we have the responsibilities, but I think together we can achieve a lot. And I hope that other states, the re-elected government in Portugal, hopefully the PP in power in Spain soonly, and others, of course, Ireland, with my good friend Pascal as finance minister. Yeah, but there are a lot of these committed people, and I think now it's the time to deliver. We have Commission majority, we have the member states, we have Council, very important, in the Parliament. Now there's really a chance to do that, and if we can push that, I'm very optimistic for the future. And therefore I think, coming back to your question, it's not only for Germany, it's for all of us. Yeah. And as I said, if Germany is recovering, all our neighbors are recovering automatically. And that even till Portugal.
Of course.
Of course.
So I'm just thinking, Mr. Nuncio, if you were, in Brussels and you were, asked what is the, what do the Portuguese think should be the priorities at a European level to try and, build growth, build capitals, markets union, to try and get the economy growing again?
I think there are two main priorities. The first one is to boost retail investor participation. The other one is to facilitate cross-border investments across Europe. For the first case, I think we may take a two-way approach. First, improving financial literacy across Europe. That is very, very important. On the other hand, at the member state level, to adopt tax incentives for this type of savings. I think it will also be important to promote the market. On the other hand, the harmonization of capital markets and tax law, it's required, in my opinion. With the tax harmonized, some barriers come down, and that is good for business, that is good for the markets. At the EU capital markets level, I think we should continue to work in further integration of the markets to facilitate SMEs access to finance and capital, and to improve securitization across Europe. That is also very important. And at the member states level, as I said, I think it will be important to promote tax incentives in order to allow European households to invest their savings in financial assets here in Europe.
It's interesting you mentioned about tax incentives, because whenever I'm in Brussels and I meet asset managers or the people who actually manage the money, they say if you want to kickstart these kind of schemes in whatever country,
and Ireland is a good example.
Yes, and I think you know, certain member states use tax incentives for, you know, Pillar 2, maybe Pillar 3
Yeah.
pension savings, very important. But I think they can also be used for savings and investment
right.
accounts generally
Absolutely.
to try and get things going, because often we find, and this was a big priority of former Commissioner McGuinness, these products can be poorly understood
Exactly.
by individual investors, and there's sometimes kind of a feeling that, you know, you're trying to take all my money, or you're going to lose all my money and my savings, which of course is not the case. So actually the state involvement, just like with export credit banks or whatever, can help
That's
to
right.
mitigate some of that risk.
Yeah.
But I think we are coming up to out of time. I just want to thank both our speakers. Thank you very much. It was a
very
great
much.
discussion. Thank you for watching,